this is Mr. S, and today we're going to be finding unknown angle measures. So we're going to be covering all things angles today. So really quickly, as I'm speaking and explaining each of these angle measures, I want you to write them down, pause it if you need to, but this needs to be in your notebook. So we're going to be focusing on 4 different types of angles today. We're focusing on adjacent angles, which is when angles share a common side and have the same vertex. So basically, it just means 2 angles that are right next to each other. See, they have a common vertex, which is like a point that they're all connected at, and they have a common side, which is where angle ABD and DBC, they have a common side here. Then we also have complementary angles, which is when the sum of 2 angles equal 90 degrees. So as you can see, when an angle looks like an L, that means it's making a 90-degree angle. However, these are 2 angles. It's one right here and one right here. And this angle measure, this is not drawn to scale, by the way, but this angle is 10 degrees, and then this angle is 80 degrees. 10 plus 80 equals 90, so it's a complementary angle. Then we also have supplementary angles, which is when the sum of 2 angles equal 180. It's very simple to complementary, except these 2 had to equal 180. We all know that a line technically is an angle. So a straight line is 180 degrees. So this side is 90, this side is 90. So 90 plus 90 equals 180. So this angle is a supplementary angle. And last, we have vertical angles, which is when 2 angles formed at the intersection which is 2 opposite angles formed at the intersection of 2 lines. These 2 angles have the same measure. So it's basically angles that form when 2 lines cross into each other and intersect each other. So as you can see, these 2 top ones, they're both 60. These 2 side ones are both 30, because when the angles intersect each other, they make identical angles as the one on top and the one across from them. Well, basically, yeah, across from them, the angles opposite to them. So these are vertical angles. So make sure you guys have all 4 of these angles written down in your notebook, because it's going to be key in helping you with your homework. Okay, let's continue. So for our first example, we're going to be naming angles. So the first thing I want you to do is draw this figure and then write down our directions. We're going to name a pair of adjacent angles, complementary angles, supplementary angles, and also vertical angles. So I want you to write all this, pause it with whatever you need to do, write all this, and then come back when you're done. Okay, so by now you should have already written all this down, so let's begin. So first, let's find adjacent angles. And if we remember, adjacent angles are basically angles that are right next to each other and have a common side. So luckily, with this figure right here, we have a lot of angles that are right next to each other, so we have literally the pick of the litter. So what they had to have is a common side. It's a common side. So let's say these 2 angles right here, EBD and DBC, they have a common side that they both share, and they had to have a common vertex, which is like basically a point that connects them. So EBD and DBC, they both have point D. So therefore, angles EBD and angle DBC are adjacent. Let me zoom out a little bit. All right, are adjacent. I'm sorry if that's a little blurry, but you know it's DBC. All right, so now let's do complementary angles. So complementary angles, if we remember, they're basically 2 angles that when we add them up together, they equal 90 degrees. So luckily, actually, there's a little cheats that your textbook gives you. Whenever 2 angles form this little square, know that forms 90 degrees. So that's why that square is there, to show you that it's a 90-degree angle. It's a right angle. So therefore, it's the same exact thing, I guess. Both of them are going to be the same thing. So these 2 angles, they form 90 degrees. So therefore, it's going to be the same answer. It's going to be EBD and DBC. So as you can see, an angle can be 2 at the same time. It can't be all 4 at the same time, but they can be 2 at the same time. And beware that pretty much all these angles are adjacent angles, because this is adjacent to this, this is adjacent to this, this is adjacent to this. The word adjacent actually just means being right next to. So that's why. Okay, now let's talk about supplementary angles. Let's see which one of these 2 are supplementary angles. And just remember, supplementary angles are basically when 2 angles form a straight line or 180 degrees. So I see 2 straight lines. I'm gonna just do this one for fun. So as you can see, FBC, that's a straight line. However, it is formed by two different angles. It's formed by angle FBA and also ABC. So therefore, my two angles are going to be, like I just said, FBA and ABC. And that is because these two angles, when they're put together, they form a straight line or 180 degrees. And last but not least, we're going to look for our vertical angles. And if you remember, vertical angles basically are formed when two lines cross into each other, they intersect. And then we realize that, yeah, when basically two angles intersect. And with vertical angles, we see that two of the angles, they're always going to be equal. The angle across of them are always going to be equal to each other. So now let's see if we see any vertical angles here. So I see a line going this way and also a line going this way. So therefore, these two angles should be vertical angles. So FBA and also DBC, these two angles are vertical angles and they would have the same measure. If this was 60 degrees, this would be 6 degrees. And also along with that, angles ABC and also FBD are also, would also be vertical angles, because whatever this angle would be, let's say this is like 90 degrees, well, not, it couldn't be 90 degrees. Let's say this is 100 degrees, then the measure of these two angles would also equal 100 degrees. Because as you can see, this is only one big angle and these are technically two angles. So whatever this would be, it'll be equal to the measure of these two angles combined. So FBD and ABC are also vertical angles. But for this case, just to make it simpler, I'm going to make FBA and also DBC vertical angles. So I'm going to put FBA and DBC. Okay, so for the try it yourself section, I want you to first write down this again and also answer the question. I want you to name a pair of adjacent angles, complementary angles, supplementary angles, and also vertical angles based off of this figure. So I want you to do it all by yourself, and I want you to write it down and answer it. This is pretty easy if you're paying attention to our last example. So I want you to pause in 3, 2, 1, pause. Okay, so by now you should have already found all 4 angles. So let's go ahead and dive right in to see if what you put was correct. Of course, there's a chance that my answers might be different from yours because, you know, we have a lot of different angles here. But as long as it's along the veins of what I'm doing, that's perfectly fine. So let's find adjacent angles, which as we know are basically 2 angles that are right smack dab next to each other. So I'm going to just choose the first ones I see here. I see that QJK and also KJL are right next to each other, so I'm going to put those down. So I'm going to put QJK and also and also KJL. Also, just in case your past teacher hasn't explained it before, I'm not just doing 3 random letters. I'm not just doing Q, K, Q, J, or whatever. What I'm doing is I'm seeing what ties both of these by the middle. So QJK because J is in the middle, and it's also KJL because J is in the middle. So watch the way that you're writing these angles. If you were to put the wrong angle sequence on your state test, you would get the answers wrong. Mr. Smith, I'll probably give a half point because I see where your mind is at, but still make sure you pay attention to where you're putting these, to the way you're writing these angle names down. So now, let's do 2 complementary angles, which basically means 2 angles that equal 90 degrees. And as I said, the main way to check with these type of angles is that there's going to be a little square there. So since I put this square here, I see that PJN and also NJM are complementary angles. So I'm going to put that down. It is PJN and NJM. You see, even Mr. Smith, please be careful with naming the angles. It's always the one in the middle that's connecting them that's in the middle of the sequence when you're naming angles. All right, now let's do supplementary angles, which basically means 2 angles that equal 180 degrees. I see some where 3 angles equal 180 degrees. Unless, I guess, if it is 3 angles, that should count. So if you did that, then very good job. Because I guess 3 angles, as long as it equals 180 degrees, then it counts. So I see this line right here, so I could do either side, but I'm gonna do MJN, NJP, and also PJQ as all supplementary angles. Because when you add up all 3 of these measures, it's going to equal 180 because it's forming a straight line. So I'm going to write all 3 of these angles really quickly. So I'm going to be writing MJN, comma, NJP, comma, and also PJQ. So be careful with these. It can be 3 angles. So now let's do vertical angles. So basically, as you know, vertical angles form when we have a cross and 2 angles that basically are across from each other. So just like how I pointed to right here to show you an example, PJQ and MJL are vertical angles because they're formed by 2 lines crossing and they're right across from each other, and they probably, if we had to measure it, they would have the same angle. So it is PJQ and MJL. So if you got all of these right, or you basically got something close to what I put, as in like the same vein, like maybe not, like maybe if for supplementary angles, if you didn't cover this side, you covered the other side, that's still fine. If you got them right, give them all a big check. If not, please pay attention to why I put these letters here, and also please pay attention to the letter sequence as well. Okay, let's go on to our next example. All right, so for our next example, we're doing example 2 using pairs of angles. So we're going to be classifying angles and also finding out missing angle measures. So the first thing I want you to do is write down the title and also the description, because these are the type of questions they're going to be asking for your homework. So I want to make sure that you know exactly what you're looking for. And then I also want you to write down this little key I wrote here, which basically shows that a right angle with a square equals 90 degrees, and a straight angle with that's basically a line, it equals 180 degrees. So now let's begin. So we had to classify each pair of angles, which basically means say which type they are and then find out what x equals. So I believe since this angle was formed by 2 lines crossing each other, it is a vertical angle. And as we know, all vertical angles, if they're across from each other, they equal the same. So if this is 70, then this should equal 70 as well. So x equals 70 degrees. So now, and make sure as I'm writing each of these answers, you're not just watching, it's not a movie, you're taking notes and drawing the same angles yourself. So let's go on to our next angle. As we see, off the bat, I see that this angle is a right angle, and it looks like these 2 angles, they form the right angle. So therefore, these are complementary. And I can tell that it's a right angle because it's built like an L and also has a square, and it matches our little guide here. So these are complementary angles. And now we're going to see how to find x. So let's see. These 2 angles, what do they equal again? 90. So therefore, it's going to be 31 plus whatever x is plus 4. And that's going to equal 90. So what we have to do first is combine like terms. So I don't think there's any terms like x here. There's no 3x or 4x or anything like that. However, 31 and 4, they are like terms. So I'm going to combine them. So I'm going to do x plus 31 plus 4 equals 90. And then when we combine these 2 like terms, it's going to be x plus 35 equals 90. So then what do we do now to find out what x equals? We had to subtract 35 on both sides. And let's do that really quickly. 0, obviously we can't do 0 minus 5. So we're going to borrow from this 9 and then turn that into an 8. And then 10 minus 5 equals 5. 8 minus 3 equals 5. And these cancel each other. So x equals 55 degrees. because 55 plus 4 equals 59, and 59 plus 31, it should equal 90. 9 plus 1 equals 0, then 1 plus 5 equals 6, 6 plus 3 equals 90. So that's what makes it a complementary angle. So now let's see these two right here. So we have two angles that are right next to each other. However, so I could say adjacent angles. However, what do these two angles form? They form a straight line. So I'm gonna put both of them. I'm gonna put adjacent and it also forms a supplementary angle because these two angles equal 180. I almost spelled it wrong. Supplementary angle. Well, angles. All right, so now let's go ahead and answer. So this one is very similar to our last equation. So you have x plus x minus 4, and it equals, what does a straight angle equal? It equals 180. So therefore, it's going to equal 180 degrees. Well, just 180. So let's find out what actually x equals. So now looking here, we want to see if there's any like terms. So of course, I don't think there's any terms like 4, but x and x, those are like terms. And if you remember, what secret number is in front of the x? When we just see x, there's always a invisible number there. And that number is 1. So what is 1x plus 1x? That's going to equal 2x minus 4. So now, in order to get x by itself, we have to get rid of this minus 4. So we're going to do the opposite by adding 4 on both sides. So that's going to equal 184. These are going to cancel, which is going to be 2x. And then to get x by itself, since 2 is being multiplied by the x, we're going to have to divide this 2x by 2 and divide the 184 by 2 as well. So as you know, these are going to cancel each other out, and it's just going to equal x. And I could draw the whole bar and do it over here by the side, but how many times, what's 4 divided by 2? 2. And what's 18 divided by 2? 9. So therefore, our answer is going to be 92. So that is how you find missing angles. So this x, it's actually 92. And this x is also 92. And we have 92 minus 4, which equals 88. And then if we do 88 plus 92, 8 plus 2 equals 10, 0, then 1. Then 1 plus 8 equals 9. 9 plus 9 equals 18. So it's 180. So that's how you can check if your answer is correct. So x equals 92. Let's keep on going. All right. So now it's the do-it-yourself section. So I want you to write all this down and also complete it by yourself. So I want you to classify what these two, say what type of angles these two angles form. And then I want you to find out what x equals. So I want you to write all that down, and then I want you to pause it in 3, 2, 1, pause. All right, so by now you should have already answered this question. So let's go ahead and answer it together. So it says to classify the pair of angles. So these two angles are right next to each other, so they could be adjacent. However, I do see the little square here, so it's going to form a complementary angle. So you can write complementary or adjacent, but I'm just gonna put complementary angle here. So since these two angles are right next to each other and it forms a little square, then it's going to equal 90 degrees, whatever it is. So, however, these angles are going to be x plus 2x minus 3. I'm going to put it in little parentheses just to divide it. And since these two angles right next to each other and it equals a right angle, it's going to be 90 degrees. So let's keep on going. Are any of these numbers like terms? Yes, x and 2x are actually like terms. So remember, what secret number is in front of this x? 1. So what do you think is 1x plus 2x? Good, 3x minus 3, and that's going to equal 90. So what do you think is the first thing we're gonna have to get rid of? This -3. And we're gonna do that by adding 3 on both sides. So obviously these cancel, and then this is going to be 93. And then we have this, then we're gonna bring down the 3x. So since this 3 is being multiplied by the x, we're going to divide it by 3, and then divide the other side by 3. And then we're going to cancel, that's what's going to be x. And how many times can 3 go into 3? Once. How many times can 3 go into 9? 3 times. So our grand answer is going to be 31 degrees. I hope you guys learned all about how to find proper angle measures and name angles. I hope you guys all also have a great day, and God bless.